Effective this July, 3 shifts are silently making their way into the lives of older Americans. And every single one of them is designed to drain money directly from your finances. Not at some point down the road, not in the distant future, but right now, this very month. One of them can skim a portion of your Social Security payment before it even arrives in your account. Another one allows the government to withhold as much as half of your monthly benefit, even when the error was completely beyond your control. And the third one, the one barely anyone is discussing, can quietly eliminate assistance that millions of aging Americans silently rely on just to keep food on their tables. Here is what makes this situation so alarming. Every one of these changes was crafted to take place behind the scenes. No oversized, bold notice in the mail, no phone call, no heads up from anybody. You are expected to discover what happened when your deposit lands lighter than it should be. And by that point, that money has already been taken. My name is Walter Barron. I am an estate attorney, and I have spent many years sitting face to face with families who learned about a rule exactly like these ones a month too late. My purpose on this channel is straightforward. I go through the fine print so that burden does not fall on you, and I break it down in everyday language so you know precisely what is shifting and precisely what steps you can take. Because here is the part that rarely gets mentioned. For all 3 of these changes, there is a legitimate way to shield yourself, but only when you are aware it is happening. So stay right here with me, whether you are 62 or 82, whether you are still in the workforce or fully into retirement. Because at minimum, one of these 3 is going to affect somebody in your life. And that third one is the one I want you to focus on most closely, because it is the one that blindsides people every single time before they ever see it coming. Let us begin with the first change, and it is a significant one. Starting this July, the federal government is once again permitted to pull money directly from your Social Security payment to settle an old student loan balance. Now, I already know what some of you are thinking. Walter, I am 70 years old. I do not carry a student loan, and you might be absolutely right. But before you move past this section, hear me out, because this one is catching people completely off guard for 2 distinct reasons. The first reason is that this had been suspended for years. So nearly everyone stopped thinking it was even a possibility. During the pandemic, the government placed a hold on the collection of defaulted federal student loans. And that hold quietly remained in place for quite a long time. Many people assumed that the debt had simply disappeared. It had not. It was sitting there the entire time. And now the collection mechanism is being switched back on. The second reason is the one that truly hurts. It is not only people who borrowed money for their own education. It is grandparents and parents who co-signed or who took out what are known as Parent Plus loans to help a child or grandchild make it through school. That loan carries your name. If it slipped into default, the government treats it as your obligation and your Social Security becomes fair game to settle it. Here is precisely how the process works. It runs through something called the Treasury Offset Program. When a federal student loan is in default, the Treasury is authorised to garnish your Social Security. They can take as much as 15% of your monthly benefit. There is one protection in place, and it matters. They are required to leave you with no less than $750 per month. But consider what that actually means. If your check is around $1,200, 15% amounts to $180 gone every single month before you ever lay eyes on it. On a fixed income, $180 is the electricity bill. It is the grocery run. It is the medical copay. Let me bring this to life for you. Picture a woman, 68 years old, retired, living off a modest Social Security payment. Years back, she co-signed a loan so her grandson could pursue a college education. He hit some bumps. The loan fell behind and life carried on. She's not given that loan a single thought in a decade. Then one month her check arrives nearly $200 short with no clear explanation. She did not do anything differently that month. Nothing in her life had changed. The only thing that changed is that a switch got flipped somewhere in an office in Washington. That is how silently this unfolds. And this is not affecting a small number of people. Estimates suggest roughly 450,000 Social Security recipients could be exposed to this once collections resume. A large portion of them are retirees living entirely off that monthly check and nothing else. So here is what you need to do, and I want you to actually write this down. Do not simply sit and wait for a smaller check to arrive. If you have any federal student debt in your name at all, including a Parent Plus loan taken out for a child or grandchild, you have real options available, and the vast majority of people never use them. The first option is financial hardship. You can submit a request to the Department of Education to halt the garnishment on the basis that losing that money would leave you unable to meet your basic living costs. And here is the figure that genuinely surprised me. According to the government's own Consumer Protection Agency, approximately 82% of Social Security recipients carrying a defaulted federal student loan would actually qualify for that hardship relief. 82%. The relief is right there within reach, and almost no one claims it simply because they never knew to ask for it. The second option is to bring the loan out of default status entirely, either through what is called loan rehabilitation, where you commit to a set of small, agreed-upon payments, or through consolidation. Once the loan exits default status, the garnishment stops. Your Social Security is protected once again. The bottom line here is this: this is not a problem without a solution. But the door to that solution only opens if you take action before or right at the moment that check starts shrinking. Reach out to your loan servicer, inquire about hardship provisions and rehabilitation, and do it today while your full payment is still coming through. Which brings me to the second change. And if the first one left you feeling a bit uneasy, this next one is going to make you sit up and pay close attention, because this one does not require you to have any debt whatsoever. Beginning now, the Social Security Administration is authorised to withhold up to half of your entire monthly payment to recoup what they refer to as an overpayment. Let me clarify what an overpayment actually means, because most people get it wrong. An overpayment occurs when Social Security determines that at some point in the past they sent you more money than they should have. Perhaps your income shifted. Perhaps a benefit was recalculated. Perhaps a form was submitted and processed behind schedule. And here is the part that makes people genuinely furious, with good reason. Very often the overpayment was not the result of anything you did. It was caused by their own miscalculation, their own administrative error, their own paperwork mishandling, and yet you are the one they come after to collect from. For years, this situation was handled with some degree of care. Under the previous standard, when they clawed back an overpayment, they took roughly 10% of your monthly check while you paid it down gradually. 10% is painful, but most people can work around it. That approach is finished. Earlier this year, the agency moved to bring back a significantly more aggressive rate of recovery. They initially announced they would take 100%, meaning your entire check, until the balance was cleared. Following a considerable public uproar, they landed on 50%, half. Let that sit with you for a moment. Half of your Social Security payment withheld, potentially for months at a stretch, to cover a mistake you may have had absolutely nothing to do with. For someone who depends entirely on that check, losing half is not an inconvenience. Losing half is a genuine crisis. I have witnessed firsthand how this lands on a real human being. Imagine a man, 71 years old, who opens a plain-looking envelope that arrived in his mailbox. Inside is a notice informing him that he was overpaid 3 years ago and that they plan to recover it by holding back half of his monthly payment, beginning very soon. He reads it 3 times over. He never received a raise. He never concealed income. As far as he can determine, if a mistake happened at all, it was on their end, not his. And yet, the letter is not making a request. It is issuing a directive. That feeling, that combination of confusion and fear, is precisely what 2 million households are about to experience. And the overwhelming majority of them will assume there is nothing they can do about it. That assumption is the single most costly mistake they can make. And this is far from rare. According to the government's own recent accounting, close to 2 million benefit recipients had been overpaid, amounting to roughly $23 billion. That is a significant volume of letters going out, and a large number of checks about to be cut in half. But here is the encouraging part, and this is exactly why you need to understand your rights. You are not without power when an overpayment notice arrives. There are 3 specific actions you can take, and they genuinely work. Action 1. The moment an overpayment notice reaches you, understand that there is typically a window of around 90 days before they actually begin withholding funds. Do not let that window pass without acting. That window is your shield. Action 2. If you cannot afford to absorb that level of reduction to your check, you can formally request a lower withholding rate. There is a specific form created for exactly this purpose. It is the request for a lower rate of withholding. You lay out what you can realistically afford to contribute, say 10% rather than 50%, and you can bring that monthly payment back up close to what you need while you sort the situation out. Action 3, and this is the most important one. If you genuinely believe the overpayment was not caused by anything you did, or you flat out do not believe an overpayment occurred at all, you have the right to appeal it and to request a formal waiver. When you file that appeal within the appropriate time frame, it can actually place the collection process on hold while your case is reviewed. And the waiver essentially states, "This was not my fault, and repaying it is beyond my financial means. Please consider forgiving it." People succeed with these requests regularly, but only the ones who actually file them. So if one of those notices ever shows up in your mailbox, do not panic and do not discard it. It is not a final ruling. It is the opening of a conversation, and you hold considerably more leverage in that conversation than the system wants you to recognize. Now, before I walk you through the third change, the one I mentioned almost nobody sees coming, I want to pause for 30 seconds because so many of you have reached out asking me to pull everything together in a single place. Everything I cover on this channel, the social security traps, the property tax benefits most seniors never pursue, the banking moves no one ever explains clearly, the specific forms and the exact steps to take. I have compiled it all into one plain language resource. It is called the Senior Money Playbook. It was written for a real person, not for a legal professional, so you can actually read through it and put it to use. It walks you through the steps that protect your finances and the money you may unknowingly be leaving unclaimed. It contains the same guidance I would give my own parents. If you would like to access it, the link is waiting in the description below. Check it out once the video wraps up. Alright, the third change. This is the one I genuinely did not want to bury at the bottom, because it is the most understated of the three, and it is going to catch the greatest number of people completely unprepared. Beginning this July, the regulations around food assistance are shifting in a way that directly pulls in an entire group of older Americans who were previously shielded from it. I am referring to SNAP, the program most people still associate with the term food stamps. For a long time, there was a work requirement tied to the program for younger adults, but older adults were entirely exempt. If you were in your late 50s or early 60s, you were not required to demonstrate you were employed in order to keep receiving food help. That exemption is what is being eliminated under the newly enacted law. That protected age threshold is being pushed significantly higher. Adults who do not otherwise qualify for an exemption are now required to satisfy a work requirement in order to maintain their benefits. And that requirement now extends to individuals all the way up to age 65. In practical terms, this means a substantial group of Americans in their late 50s and early 60s, people who fully believed they were past this kind of requirement, now have to document 80 hours per month of work activity, approved job training, or volunteer service in order to keep the food assistance they have been counting on. 80 hours per month works out to roughly 20 hours per week. For someone who is 62, perhaps in declining health, perhaps caring for a spouse with serious medical needs, perhaps already forced out of the labour market, that is not a small expectation. Picture a woman who is 63 and stepped away from her job to care for a husband living with dementia. She is not retired in any comfortable or peaceful sense of the word. She's working non-stop every single day, just not in a way that generates a paycheck. She's relied on that food assistance to stretch whatever limited income comes in each month. Under the previous rules, her age kept her protected. Under the new rules, unless she files the correct exemption documentation, she is expected to locate and perform 20 hours per week of qualifying work, or she loses the help entirely. The projected impact is sobering. Analysts estimate that more than 1 million older adults within that 55 to 64 age window could lose access to their food assistance as a direct result of this change. However, and this is critically important, the exemptions did not all vanish. Real protections still exist. And this is precisely where knowing the details makes all the difference. You may still qualify for an exemption if you are physically or medically unable to work. You may still qualify if you are serving as a caregiver for a dependent, such as a young grandchild you are raising, or a family member who is incapacitated. If you currently receive disability benefits, SSI, or Social Security Disability Insurance, that typically qualifies as an automatic exemption. And once you actually turn 65, the full exemption returns. So here is your move. If you or anyone in your family falls within that late 50s to mid-60s age range and depends on food assistance, do not wait until a notice arrives telling you your benefits have been cut. Contact your state SNAP office directly. Ask them point blank which exemption applies to your particular situation and make certain the supporting documentation is submitted on time. A letter from your physician, evidence that you are a caregiver, documentation of your disability benefits. The exemption only protects you if it is officially on record. The people who end up losing their benefits are almost never the ones who did not qualify to keep them. They are almost always the ones who qualified just fine, but never turned in the required paperwork. So let us bring everything together now, because I want you to leave here with the full picture. Not just 3 alarming headlines. 3 changes are arriving this July, and they all share a single common thread. They are all engineered to occur quietly. The student loan garnishment, as much as 15% of your Social Security being switched back on for hundreds of thousands of recipients, including grandparents who co-signed decades ago. The overpayment clawback, up to half of your monthly check, frequently for a mistake that was never yours to begin with. And the food assistance work requirement, now stretching all the way to age 65, pulling the floor out from under a group of people who assumed they were still protected. But you are not without power when facing any of them. For the student loan garnishment, hardship relief is available and most people qualify for it without ever realising they can claim it. For the overpayment, there is a response window, a reduced rate request, and a formal appeal and waiver process that can both pause and potentially eliminate the debt entirely. And for the food assistance rule, exemptions remain standing if you file for them before the deadline passes. The single most critical thing I can share with you is this: the people who get hurt by these changes are almost never the ones who had no options available. They are the ones who were unaware those options even existed until the money was already gone from their accounts. That is how the entire system functions. These rules are built on the expectation that you will not be paying close enough attention. So paying close attention, starting today, is precisely how you protect yourself. Please understand that what you are hearing here is general educational information, not legal or financial advice tailored to your individual circumstances. The specifics of how each of these rules is implemented can vary and are subject to change. Always verify your own situation directly with the Social Security Administration, the Department of Education, or your state benefits office before taking any action. But now you are informed about what is coming, and you know the moves available to you. Do me one favour before you close this out. Think of one person in your life who is over the age of 60, living on a fixed income, and send this video to them right now. At least one of these 3 changes could be on the verge of hitting their monthly check, and they almost certainly have not heard a single word about it yet. You could be the reason they hold on to their money. Thank you sincerely for watching. Take care of yourself and everyone around you, and I will see you in the next one.